Alright, so I just finished control systems. Now we continue with processes. These are short for business processes. And a process is a sequence of steps used to achieve a goal or to accomplish something. And good old English is to get the job done. So, this is the manner or the way how things are done. Manner or way means the steps that you have to go through. You first do this, you first do that. I explained to you early on process. What is the process to register for classes, or what is the process in general for you to become a student here? You gotta apply, they gotta take a look at this, you gotta supply the different documents. Then when you get the approval, you gotta get yourself a ticket so it can fly. Once you know your date, you gotta arrange here for your housing, right? And so you got certain things you gotta do to get here and to get your life started over here. You gotta register for classes, right? You gotta find out what is the textbook and all the other things. So all of these represent various processes. So some processes will be done at the high level, some processes will be done at the low level. Let me provide the basic stuff. Example will be formulating strategy. I was actually supposed to write over here examples. How is a business, an international business, formulate its strategy? Or BMW, how do they formulate the strategy? Is it just 2 executives? Is it 20 executives? Is it 30 executives? Is it all management get for a weekend or for a full week together? What is the process? How do they do it? Next one is resource allocation. So the first one is strategy formulation. The second process is resource. Again, how? That's the key word. How are they going to determine the budget for sales or for engineering, design, engineering? How are they going to determine the budget for marketing and advertising? Okay. How are they going to determine their expansion abroad, which is part of the formulating the strategy. So you're going to have a lot of decisions over here. Product evaluation. How is a BMW going to evaluate its new product or its new car or its new engine? Product evaluation, and in this particular case, if it's a car, if it's a product, how are they going to test it? Again, what is the procedure? So when we say processes, one of the simple ways, more common sense way to think about a process is a procedure. What is the procedure for this? What is the procedure for that? In other words, which are the steps, or what do you have to do? Customer complaints, or customer, in general, service. How do you handle customer complaints? How do you handle customer questions, customer inquiries? Okay. Let's see what else. Product evaluation and product quality. How do we improve product quality? And another very difficult is employee performance. How do we evaluate employee performance? Every 6 months, every 3 months, you ask only the boss, or you actually evaluate the boss by asking people underneath the boss, or asking the other managers, or what they call a 360-degree evaluation, where just ask about everybody and you evaluate, about all the major things, okay? But having a very extensive employee performance is extremely costly, takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and all the other things. So it could be exhausting. I went through this in my corporation. Every 2 years we had to go through an extensive, and it takes a lot of time, a lot of paperwork, and all the other things. So all of these are different examples, and it just takes time. And then you have more modern concepts like ideas like total quality management, first introduced by the Japanese, being focused almost entirely, and I don't want to get into the details of basic management over here. And another one is called JIT, just in time systems. You develop systems where your procurement, getting the spare parts, getting the tires, getting everything, all the little pieces of the car arrive just on time at the plant, exactly when you need it, so that you maintain very low inventories. Maintaining inventories is costly, and you can minimize your cost for maintaining inventories by minimizing your inventories, and you minimize your inventories by timing the arrival of your inventory to be just when you are about to run out of inventories. So you will have more frequent deliveries, and these deliveries will be more timely. This works when the whole culture, the whole country has the mentality of performing on time. Everything to be planned days, weeks, and months ahead, so that you know when you're going to produce what. Based on that, which parts you're going to need, when, how many you're going to need, so that everything is very well planned out, okay? And with a very high degree of certainty. All right? So these are some of the processes that need to be very well detailed and worked out. Another modern one, let me use these with the blue because this is just a regular. Another modern concept here with processes is the so-called Six Sigma, which originally meant the idea of having only one part in a million to be bad. The idea is that you have a normal statistical distribution. For those of you who had some statistics, where you got a normal distribution with some mean, and one of the ideas is that when you take a 1 sigma on the left and 1 sigma on the right, okay, sigma exemplifies the standard deviation. These two sigmas will capture anyone taking statistics, right? The conflict? No, not taking statistics. Will take 66%. So if you're working with 2 sigma, you're gonna have like 66%. If you're working with, now sigma on the left here and on the right is gonna be 95%. Here is gonna be 99%. So depending on how you count the sigmas, do you count the sigma on the one side or on both sides? So here, this represents plus or minus 3 sigma represents 99%, okay? But in their case, what they have in mind is they're going to be 1 more sigma, 2 more sigma, 3 more sigma. And when this is here, let me see how I'm going to do this with 6 sigma. It's going to be 99.999. Maybe I can throw in an extra 9 as a number. It's going to be 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million. And the basic idea is that you stay within, you don't have, your quality stays within these ranges. I mean, I don't want to get into that, but the basic idea is amazingly simple. If you're creating parts, no more than 1 in a million parts will be bad, okay? So if you're creating these spark plugs, 999,999 will be good, and you're going to have 1 bad plug. If you're making tires, car tires, again, out of 1,000,001 tires, 1,000,000 will be good, and only 1 tire will be bad or will have a defect, okay? So the basic idea of Six Sigma is to have, let me translate in simple English, defect-free production and manufacturing. You just don't have defects, okay? Because there's been problems before at one point where in the Japanese quality went so bad where they had a lot of defects in the car. You buy a brand new Honda or brand new Toyota, and suddenly it's got a problem here, it's got a problem there, it's got a lot of quality problems. So they had to introduce, well, first total quality management, and then Six Sigma kind of like to begin to focus on all of those things. Most of these things, the innovators and are first introduced and implemented in Japan. As much as Americans would be the innovators and leaders in the world of management, some management techniques are actually first introduced and implemented by the Japanese. Again, so all of these require processes, okay? All of these relate to processes. Now, getting back to processes, another fundamental concept is, and we did this when I was working in Columbus, Ohio for a corporation I told you, we did what's called a flow chart. And a flow chart simply shows you the different steps that you go through to get a particular job done. For example, to get a weekly sales report, you first have to do this, then you have to do this, then you have to confirm this, then you have to do this, then you go in the system. For example, all the salespeople got to put in their data into the system, then all the managers got to do their approvals, then we got to do, check the database for integrity and that everything's filled out, and then you run the report, and the report, whatever it is, a flow chart will simply represent you and represent you the steps that you go through, and is usually done with boxes. So you can also write it as step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. So for example, a flow chart for me, when I was, let's say, working in Saudi Arabia, and I want to go and get me, let's say, go to visit Bahrain, okay? It's 400 kilometers drive. You can drive easily 130, 140 on the highway. Put it on cruise control, so in 3 hours, you're From Riyadh, you're in, or at least at the border of Bahrain. But the first thing I gotta do is print the form. Print is gonna be like visa form or approval form. After I print it out, I need to fill the form. After I fill the form, next step is it's going to be my department chair approval. So, department chair approval in the sense of signature. Then, the next step is Dean approval. After the Dean approves, it's going to be Vice President of the University for HR approval. After the HR approves it, HR moves it internally to visa section approval. So internally, the chief of HR, when he signs and sees all the other signatures, will give it to, within HR, visa section approval, where I'm going to, where they're going to issue for me, or get from the government, an exit visa. Saudi Arabia is one of the few countries in the world which requires for anybody leaving the country to have an exit visa. So they're going to get me exit visa approval. After that, the next step is passport release. Passport release means that my passport is locked in HR in a huge safe, okay, where it stays permanently there. And only if I get special approval, I can actually withdraw my passport. And passport release will require reddeposit guarantee. And the redeposit guarantee basically means they want me to guarantee that when they give me the return or give me the passport, within so many days, I guarantee, let's say within 7 days, to return it back. In other words, they say, how many days you're going to travel, and after you come back, you have to return the passport within 3 days, okay? And then I will actually redeposit the passport, and I'll get a guarantee release, okay? So, again, the idea is that you go through this. Here, the arrow goes like this, and here, the arrow goes like this. And usually the flow chart is done with these boxes. It will have two other things. It will show you time when things get done. Maybe some of these, now in this particular case, the flow chart is strictly sequential, but sometimes you can do 2 or 3 steps at the same time by 3 different people, okay? And you can show time, and you can show in the box underneath or on the side somehow who is responsible, who is doing it. So for this ball I'm responsible. Responsible employee. Phil, responsible employee. For department chair approval, responsible is the employee to bring it to the department chair. And then the employee, when the department chair signs, the employee is responsible to collect it back. So you always have who does the step. All right? So that's a basic process. And out of this, you have the next idea is process reengineering. A lot of times, things just happen and evolve over time in businesses, in corporations, or anywhere in the world, where the process becomes too long, too complicated, too difficult, very cumbersome, very time-consuming. And then you need to re-engineer. To re-engineer means you redesign the process, usually to be faster, to be quicker, to be simpler, and to be less prone to error. So you make the process such that it's quicker, easier, and more reliable. And sometimes you may have to get new people or shuffle responsibilities, and you need to do this. When I was in my second year over there, we had a huge process re-engineering because we said, oh, this is complicated, this is too complicated. You got to go through 25 steps to get this. You got to go through 16 steps to get that. Just mapping out the flow chart of the 20 most common processes took a long time, and it takes a long time because people don't know who's doing what, when, and how, and just trying to figure out what the steps are. Turns out that most people don't know how things get done. I'm in a major corporation with 2,000 people. Most people know what they do, and they don't know who else is doing what, okay? So just figuring out who's doing what is a major problem, which is creating the flow chart. And then you need to redesign it. We say re-engineering. And then you need to re-educate the employees. You may need to retrain them and all the other things. And this is about efficiency and effectiveness. In other words, you want to redesign the process to be efficient and to be effective. Efficient means to require as few resources as possible, and effective means to achieve or to accomplish its goal, to have the customer serviced. All right, let's see what else I have. And the other thing which is that corporations need to recognize that sometimes you have new processes. For example, this university has been around for many years, but it's only since recently they have foreign students like you, okay? And if you got foreign students like you, meaning brand new customers of different type and different culture, different needs, right? You have the need for housing. You don't have to do that for the locals, right? They can figure out their housing, but when you come over here, first night you want to sleep somewhere, right? Meaning not in the street. So they need to have a new special process how to handle specifically foreign students who come in bulk, like 20, 30, 50 people. When they come, 30 people, I mean, you need to handle housing, transportation, airplane, and all. I mean, you'll need to create a brand new process. So if you are going to be running an international business, management needs to recognize that there will be oftentimes brand new processes. How you release a new iPhone 5S in Asia, okay, or in Europe. So management has to be open to develop brand new processes for things that didn't exist before, because it wasn't part of life before, it wasn't part of business before, it wasn't part of reality before, and now it is, okay? So that's 13.4. 13.5, I actually did a little bit of it already, is culture. Organizational culture. So, 13.4 processes, 13.5, organizational culture. As I was explaining before, changing the culture, adopting the culture is extremely important. Culture, source or origin. The origin of a business culture is usually from the founders of the business, those who found the business, those who developed the business, those who were over time historically important leaders, and they usually affect culture. Another thing that affects the culture is the country, as in the nation. In other words, corporate culture is affected by national culture. Okay? So, business culture depends on the nation. Okay? You're going to have one type of culture in, you all guys know, Greece, and a very different culture in Sweden or Finland, right? I mean, culture will be very different, of course. So, nation and national culture determines significantly business culture. Of course, another very important determinant of culture is history. Is it a 5-year history or 20-year history or maybe 100-year history? Okay, like General Electric being around for 100 years. Okay, General Motors for almost 100 years or so. Okay, so history determines culture a lot. So this is the origin of culture. Now the question is, how do you maintain culture? So these are the factors which determine culture comes from the origin, when it was first started, by its history, by the nation. Now, maintenance. Culture is maintained first and foremost by hiring people who would fit that culture. And of course, more importantly, firing. You get rid of people who don't fit the culture, who don't want to accept the culture, who don't acknowledge the culture, who don't value the culture. Promotion. You maintain the culture by promoting only those who are the most or the best examples of the culture. So, if someone fits the culture well, he's a good representative of the culture, he would be promoted. And if he's on a higher position, he will spread and even enforce the culture. So, you promote the people who are, we call it, part of the culture. Reward. Whatever the culture is, the culture of creativity, you'll reward the creative or the more creative people, okay? Or you'll reward the more punctual people. Whatever cultural characteristic you want, you'll just reward more of it. And next one is socialization. You keep people more socialized. If the employees are more socialized, they got more parties, especially after work parties. They got these weekend meetings. They call it sometimes team building or bonding, right? These things actually spread the culture and promote the culture, okay? Especially by the older employees, meaning those that have been longer in the company, who tell and teach the young employees what to do, what not to do. Again, as I was mentioning early on, when I came over here, the first thing for me to do, well, as I've done before, is to learn what is the local culture of the workplace. Do I have to come at 8 o'clock or 8:30? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? Is this okay? Is that okay? Well, we're in the big offices, you know, how do we talk on the phone and all the other things? Because you got 10 other people in there disturbing other people. Well, can you play music? Can you not play music in the office? All right. I mean, okay, so you got a lot of little things to learn about the culture, what's good, what's not good, and all the other things. So socialization and communication. Communication, you simply tell the employees what's good, what's bad, what's valued, what's not valued. Probably what I should have done is basically clarify, first of all, what is culture, because I really didn't. I mean, maybe I did last time. Culture is a collection of, or a system of, values and norms. So values tell you what is good and bad. Values tell you what is right, okay? Tells you what is right, okay? And so you learn about what's good, what's right, what's appropriate, okay? And the norms are the rules and guidelines. So the norms is what's right. You know, in this case, norm is how late you come, okay? Well, what's the clothing? I mean, can I have a pink shirt, right? Come into class and all those things. So norms will tell you about acceptable behavior. So what's good, what's appropriate, what acceptable behavior is, okay? And these two values, in other words, the values relates to beliefs, okay, and to ideas, and the norms relate to behaviors, okay? So, the idea of communication is you simply tell the employees what our values are. We value highly honesty, integrity, whatever the things are that we value. Creativity and all the other, you know, things like that, okay? So that's one type of, for example, say, oh, we value highly student, let's say, input or student creativity, whatever that might be, right? But again, sometimes there's a conflict, as in case with accounting. Well, I don't care about your ideas when teaching accounting, right? I don't care about your creativity. I don't expect any creativity in accounting. I expect debit, credit, get it right, get it well. I mean, same thing is in math. I mean, we don't care about all, especially statistics. I mean, solve the problem. Tell me what it is. Tell me what's the profit. Tell me what's the balance sheet, okay? Tell me, do we perform well? Well, did we make a profit? So we need the basic stuff, which is unrelated sometimes to certain values, or you just ignore the values because it's not part of what we do there. Well, here in international business is very different. All right, let's see what else I got over here. I already discussed a little bit of a strong culture. Strong culture usually means that it significantly affects people's behavior. That's a strong culture. And the relaxed culture, it's relatively flexible. You know, people don't care too much about, you know, what's going on. So universities usually try to have a relatively relaxed type of business culture. Let me see what else I get over here. Okay. Yes, one other thing which turns out to be important is known as adaptive culture. For international businesses, for most modern businesses, the more competitive the environment it is, and as I've been writing before, the more uncertain it is, and the more interdependent it is, the more important it is for the culture to be adaptive. In other words, for the culture to change when circumstances change, when the environment change. And here the logical sequence is very simple. I wrote to you early on, and I've been repeating maybe 5 or maybe 10 times so far, is that the competitive environment drives and determines strategy. And strategy drives and determines structure as an organizational, let's call it architecture, right? And organizational architecture, again, culture is part of architecture, but architecture in turn determines culture. So culture is driven by architecture, and culture is definitely driven and is determined by structure and by competitive environment. So whenever competitive environment changes, usually will mean or result in a change, will require a change in strategy, require a change in organizational architecture, and will require a change in culture. And if the culture is adaptive, it would be able to adjust, meaning adapt and change. And if the culture is not adaptive, in this case we use this nasty medical term, which doctors love, sclerotic. Sclerotic means hardened, stiff. We use it for our arteries, which should be flexible and should easily expand and contract. And sclerotic means hardened and stiffened, okay? So if the culture is sclerotic, meaning not changing much, it can't respond to the changes in the competitive environment and the strategy, and the culture will not fit the strategy and the competitive environment. As a result, will doom the business to failure. Okay? So, building and developing adaptive culture is an important part of global business strategy, as an important component of your strategy, to be sure that the culture is adaptive. Let's see what else we got. Okay, this is done. 4, 5. Next one is 13. 6 is basic synthesis of strategy and architecture. And the synthesis is the same as summary. And you got a simple summary over here of table 13.2, page 503. Where I got a simple table, and yeah, well, let's do this. Yeah, let's use technology, right? Zoom in nice and well on the little table and hold the camera for about maybe 20 seconds. So zoom all the way where the camera, all you got is this little table in here, right? Wait. Zooming in well. Okay, letters big, nice. All right, is it looking good? Okay, all right, it's good enough. So basically, it tells you, hey, if you got localization strategy, what is vertical integration? In other words, where is the decision making? What is the horizontal differentiation. In other words, how you divide the units. What is the need for coordination? Is it high or is it low? What are the integrating mechanisms? What is the performance ambiguity and cost of controls? And the last piece is need for cultural controls. I've covered it all. This little table just tells you high, low. It's just a short, nice, sweet summary, which I will skip. And last section to complete for today and for the whole chapter, which I've already covered quite a lot from it, is called organizational change. Organizational change. And in business, organizational change is known as, which I already did partially, restructuring. Here the basic idea is that as strategy changes, you need to change the architecture. And changing the architecture means or involves restructuring. One of the most and biggest problems with organizational change is called, let's see if, yes, it's called organizational inertia. You have this word in German? Inertia? Huh? You have it? Inertia is the tendency of something, we call it of matter, to continue moving in the direction that it was moving before. In other words, you apply certain force, and after you release the force, it just keeps moving in the same direction. Simple thing. Take the pen and just roll it up, and it moves from inertia. Okay? So, organizational inertia is that people just like to keep doing what they've been doing, and people don't like to change. Change requires effort. Change is hard. People don't like to change. It's very simple things. When you get some person who's just a little bit or sometimes seriously sick, okay, and they have to change their diet. And it's like, oh man, you know, impossible. They say, no, I'd rather die, but I will not change my diet. You know, I'm not going to stop eating these hamburgers, okay? Or they say, oh no, I will never start exercising. They say, but you're going to die. They say, I'd better die, but I'm not going to change, okay? People are ready, willing to die, but they will not change. And most employees are ready and willing to get fired and lose their job, they will not change, okay? So, that's called inertia. You just keep doing what you've been doing because you like to do it, because you don't want to make any changes. And one of the sources of inertia is, of course, as I've been explaining, culture. Especially sclerotic culture. Sclerotic culture is, as you know, drives inertia. Actually, inertia don't drive inertia. Inertia is, you know, it's what it is, and prevents from successful restructuring. So, culture usually, if it's not flexible, will not allow for good and proper restructuring. Another major obstacle to restructuring is power, as in power and influence. Restructuring means that some people will necessarily lose part of their power and part of their influence, and they will resist change. People always want more power, more influence, and more, which is part of power and influence, is control. And they'll resist losing control or power or influence. And restructuring always means that someone will get more power and someone will lose. So people have what's called vested interest. And the vested interest will usually say, no, 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 we don't want to make change, okay? Let's see what else we got. Another major, again, obstacle. So all of these I'm discussing here are obstacles to change, are preconceptions, especially managers' preconceptions. Managers' managers got specific ideas. Sometimes they've been in business for 20, 30, 40 years. It's not uncommon to have a 65-year-old executive who started working at the age of 25, who's got already 40 years of experience. Well, he's done things for 40 years certain ways, and this guy doesn't want to change. But moreover, he has ideas. Well, this is what works in business, and we're not going to introduce this and this and this, okay? This is how things get done. So they will be fairly old, and a lot of times will have preconceptions, especially from old times. Like, you can't play with the laptop during classes, right? Because you're just playing Facebook and doing that. That's a preconception, okay? While modern times suggest that, well, maybe you're actually using it productively. Maybe you're actually taking your notes, okay? Maybe you're using it for good things as opposed to bad things. So, you know, some people have preconceptions that if students use it, it's got to be all for bad reasons.
It's a good example for different culture. In Germany, it's normal to use your laptop during the class, and it's
right. It's yes.
No problem. Yeah. Then
Well, again, it's no problem anywhere in the world from our point of view. The question is, when you use it in Germany, which is perfectly normal, what percentage of the students will actually use it for good purposes and use it productively to actually learn, as opposed to playing Facebook, playing YouTube, and being distracted, okay? And if 90% use it for good purposes, then it's okay and justified. But if sometimes maybe 40 or 50% of them will be just playing and fooling around and chatting on whatever, Skype or Line or Viber or whatever that might be the application, then, you know, so again, the idea is preconceptions is the idea, well, this is how it's been done for so many years and whatnot. A simple preconception is, example, I mean, not saying that I subscribe to it, is, hey, teaching was done on a blackboard and then on a whiteboard for hundreds of years, okay? And PowerPoint is not as good, is it? Well, again, I'm not saying it is, I'm not saying it is not, but some professors who have the preconception that no, PowerPoint's no good, okay? Well, others will say, no, PowerPoint is the new thing, right? Again, I don't want to get into that, but the idea is that people have their own beliefs, especially based on 20, 30, 40 years of experience, and it's very hard to convince them to change, especially if that's big boss, okay? You're not going to talk to big boss, hey, big boss, you know, all those things. All right, let's see what else we got here. And sometimes you will have basic institutional constraints. You may have national regulations, you may have local culture, of meaning of the people, okay? You will have a lot of institutional constraints of, you may have certain rules, you have certain procedures. The government may require, okay, your business exporting, I don't know, meat, okay? Well, you're exporting in another country and the government requires that you test for certain, let's say, E. coli bacteria, okay? So you have certain rules, certain regulations, you gotta go through a specific agency, but the agency says this and that, okay? So sometimes you may have institutional constraints that prevent you from changing effectively, okay? Whatever that might be. And, okay. The second part is types of changes. One type of change is, in other words, these are reasons for not changing. Why change is difficult or impossible. So one way is called incremental. Incremental changes. You make one change at a time, one step at a time. Slowly but steadily, or slowly but surely. That's one way to do it. And many managers prefer this approach. The major disadvantage takes a long time. It can take a long time, and you're still not sure that you're going to make a big change or not. So that's one way to do it. The alternative is shock therapy. Where you make huge changes, you reshuffle completely. They say you unfreeze the organization, and then you make all the big changes. You make a lot of changes. Real quick, real fast. Sometimes 2, 3, 4 changes. Sometimes you move an employee here, then there, and then there. You make 3 changes for one employee in 3 weeks. Okay, that's fine. And then you refreeze it. And then maybe after 1 or 2 months, okay, you make some finer, we call it refinements. So you may have a shock therapy plus refinements. Basically, I say, hey, we refreeze the organization for 3 months, and after 3 months, we'll reevaluate what else we need to touch up, to refine. And let's see what else I got here, because I'm almost done. So sometimes in shock therapy you will close certain departments, you will close certain operations, you will abandon certain products, you will fire some employees, you will open a brand new department. So here you're going to be making an awful lot of changes. You can change salaries, you can change positions. You're not going to be in this department, now you're going to be in that department, whatever that might be. What's the question?
We just couldn't read the refinements, but now
Refinements, yes. Refinements are small, minor changes which you make after you've made the big changes, okay? So, just minor changes after the big changes. But the overall idea is that you will have to move with speed. If you want to make big changes, you have to move fast. If you move slowly, you're not going to likely to get good results. So, major changes require fast speed. You got to be quick. And let's see, refreezing, okay. Yes. Part of this over here is that the new change, the new organization may require to rebuild a new culture. And sometimes that's very important, which building a new culture will take a much longer time. It can take a few years. Sometimes part of the problem of a downfall, the corporations will collapse, usually because of the culture, and you can make all the other organizational changes, but unless you make the culture or change the culture to fit the new structure and the new strategy, the whole organization, the whole organizational change or the restructuring is likely to fail. So, changing culture is very important. And you will, when you restructure, you need to change again the control systems and the incentives. In other words, restructuring will require to change all elements of the organizational architecture. You need to change the control systems. You need to change the organizational structure. You need to change the control systems. You need to change the incentives. Of course, you have to change a lot of the processes. Of course, you need to develop and probably change the organizational culture. So restructuring basically means that you will change fundamentally and completely all major elements of the organizational architecture, including things like centralization and centralization or decentralization, including like changing the units and including things like integrating mechanisms. But without changing the culture, usually the business is likely to fail. All right, good enough for today? More than enough.